In a distant corner of the galaxy, light years away from Earth's blue skies and bustling cities, an alien species known as the Vorthakians were planning their next conquest. For centuries, they had dominated weaker civilizations, using fear and brute force to bend others to their will. Their sleek ships hummed with advanced technology, capable of traveling faster than light. Their weapons could reduce entire planets to ash in moments. They were feared across the stars, and rightly so. But on this particular day, something unusual happened. A ripple in space-time caught their attention. It started as a faint disturbance, almost imperceptible at first. Sensors aboard the Vorthakian flagship detected strange energy signatures emanating from a nearby sector. At first, Commander Xylar dismissed it as cosmic interference, but when the readings grew stronger, he ordered his crew to investigate. What they found left them stunned. Hovering silently in the void of space was a fleet of unknown origin. These ships weren't like anything the Vorthakians had encountered before. They lacked the polished, aggressive design typical of warships. Instead, they appeared rugged, almost makeshift. Yet there was something unsettling about them. They didn't move aggressively. They simply floated there, exuding calmness. Curiosity turned into caution as the Vorthakians prepared to approach. Scanning the mysterious vessels revealed something even more shocking. Human insignias etched onto their hulls. Humans? The same fragile, disorganized species rumored to dwell on a small blue planet called Earth? It didn't make sense. How could such primitive beings possess starships capable of traversing interstellar distances? Something wasn't adding up. Back on Earth, however, life carried on as usual. Humanity remained blissfully unaware of the events unfolding light years away. No governments or military organizations claimed responsibility for the mysterious fleet. That's because these star destroyers weren't built by nations or corporations. They belonged to one man. His name was Marcus Kane, and his story was unlike any other. Marcus had once been a brilliant astrophysicist, known for his groundbreaking research on wormholes and interstellar travel. But tragedy struck when his wife and young daughter died in a car accident. Devastated, Marcus withdrew from society, retreating to the Australian outback where he lived alone in a remote cabin. Cut off from the world, he spent his days tinkering, with scraps of old satellites, abandoned tech, and anything he could salvage. To outsiders, he seemed like a recluse, a broken man who had given up on life. But inside, Marcus was driven by a singular purpose: survival. He knew that humanity's time on Earth wouldn't last forever. Centuries of pollution, overpopulation, and reckless behavior had taken their toll. If humans wanted to endure, they needed to look beyond their home planet. But Marcus didn't trust governments or corporations to prepare for the future. Too often they prioritized profit and power over progress. So he decided to take matters into his own hands. Over the course of decades, he worked tirelessly, pouring every ounce of his genius into constructing a fleet of starships. Each vessel was unique, built from whatever materials he could find. Some parts came from decommissioned satellites, others from discarded rocket components. Despite their patchwork appearance, these ships were marvels of engineering, equipped with cutting-edge technology far beyond what most humans had access to. But Marcus didn't build these ships for conquest or glory. He built them for protection, for Earth and its people. He understood that someday humanity might face threats from beyond the stars. And when that day came, he wanted to be ready. For years, his fleet remained hidden, tucked away in secret, locations scattered across the globe. But now those ships were making contact with extraterrestrial life. The Vorthakians, meanwhile, couldn't shake off their unease. Accustomed to instilling terror wherever they went, they felt unnerved by the eerie stillness of the human fleet. When the Vorthakian scouts attempted to communicate, they received a simple message transmitted in multiple languages, including Galactic Common. "We are here to observe. Do not approach." The tone was neither hostile nor submissive. It simply stated facts. This lack of aggression confused the Vorthakians. In their experience, Every species either cowered or fought, back when faced with superior power. Yet here was a group of humans who acted as though they had nothing to prove. Commander Xylar, a seasoned warrior with countless victories under his belt, found himself questioning his next move. Normally, he would have launched an attack without hesitation. But something about these humans gave him pause. They weren't acting like victims. There was no panic, no desperation. Instead, there was an unsettling calmness that sent shivers down his spine. Who were these humans, and why did they seem so confident? As the Vorthakians debated their course of action, Marcus watched everything unfold from his makeshift command center, buried deep within the desert sands. He monitored the aliens' movements through drones scattered across the galaxy. To him, this encounter was inevitable. Humanity couldn't remain ignorant of the cosmos forever. If aliens arrived seeking resources or territory, Marcus wanted to ensure they understood one thing: Earth wasn't defenseless. However, he also believed in subtlety over spectacle. Instead of launching missiles or broadcasting threats, Marcus relied on psychological warfare. By remaining calm and enigmatic, he hoped to sow doubt in the minds of potential invaders. Days turned into weeks, and the Vorthakians grew increasingly uneasy. Their attempts to gather intelligence yielded little information. Every time they tried to get closer, the human ships would adjust their positions slightly, always keeping themselves between the Vorthakians and Earth. It was maddening. How could such a seemingly primitive species possess technology rivaling theirs? More importantly, why weren't they afraid? For Marcus, the answer was simple. Fear was a tool, not a weakness. By refusing to show it, he forced the Vorthakians to question their own superiority. He knew that true strength didn't come from destruction but from control, and for now all he needed to do was wait. Unbeknownst to both sides, this standoff marked the beginning of something extraordinary. The Vorthakians had always believed themselves to be the apex predators of the galaxy. But as they stared at the silent, unyielding fleet of Marcus Kane, they began to realize that perhaps they had met their match, not in numbers or firepower, but in sheer, unshakable resolve. Little did they know, the real battle had only just begun. The Vorthakians, despite their reputation as ruthless conquerors, found themselves paralyzed by uncertainty. Their usual tactics, intimidation, aggression, and overwhelming force, seemed useless against the mysterious human fleet. The silence was deafening. No explosions rocked the void of space. No fiery exchanges of plasma cannons lit up the darkness. Just an eerie stillness, broken only by the faint hum of engines and the occasional transmission from the human ships. Each message was concise, calm, and devoid of emotion. "We are here to observe. Do not approach." Those 9 words echoed in the minds of every Vorthakian crew member, gnawing at their confidence. Commander Xylar paced the bridge of his flagship, his sharp claws clicking against the metallic floor. He was a seasoned leader, known for his strategic brilliance and unyielding determination. Yet for the first time in his long career, he felt unsure. The humans weren't behaving like any species he had encountered before. Most civilizations either surrendered immediately or fought back with everything they had. But these humans, they were different. They didn't beg for mercy, nor did they launch counterattacks. Instead, they simply waited, their ships hovering silently in formation, exuding an aura of quiet authority. Xylar called a meeting with his senior officers. The room buzzed with tension as advisors debated their next move. Some argued for an all-out assault, believing that sheer firepower would overwhelm the human fleet. Others suggested caution, pointing out the advanced technology evident in the design of the human ships. "Look at them," one officer said, gesturing to a holographic display of the mysterious vessels. "They're not sleek or polished like ours, but there's something efficient about them. Every piece seems purpose-built. And those insignias, they're human, but not from any government we've studied." Another officer chimed in, her voice trembling slightly. "What if this is some kind of trap? What if they're luring us into a false sense of security before striking?" Her words hung heavy in the air, fueling the growing unease among the crew. For a species accustomed to being the hunters, the idea of becoming prey was unthinkable. But that's exactly how the Vorthakians felt now, like prey circling the edge of a predator's lair, unsure whether to flee or fight. Back on Earth, Marcus Kane monitored the situation from his hidden command center. He watched the Vorthakians' movements through drones scattered across the galaxy, analyzing their patterns and predicting their actions. To him, this encounter was a test, a chance to prove that humanity wasn't as weak or divided as it appeared. He knew that fear could be a powerful weapon, more effective than any missile or laser beam. By refusing to engage directly, he forced the Vorthakians to confront their own doubts and insecurities. Marcus understood something that the Vorthakians didn't. Fear thrives in uncertainty. When faced with an unknown threat, even the strongest, warriors can falter. And so he played the part of the enigmatic adversary perfectly. His ships never moved unnecessarily. They never fired warning shots or made aggressive maneuvers. Instead, they remained steadfast, always positioning themselves between the Vorthakians and Earth. It was a subtle but deliberate strategy, designed to keep the invaders off balance. As days passed, the Vorthakians grew increasingly desperate. Commander Xyler ordered reconnaissance missions to gather more data about the human fleet. But each attempt ended the same way. Whenever a Vorthakian scout ship approached, one of Marcus's vessels would drift slightly closer, blocking its path. Without firing a shot, the message was clear: you may look, but you will not touch. This psychological game wore down the Vorthakians' morale. Crew members whispered among themselves, questioning their leaders' decisions. Morale plummeted as paranoia spread like wildfire. One night aboard the flagship, a junior officer named Kreven voiced a theory that sent ripples through the council chamber. Perhaps, he began hesitantly, aware of how bold his suggestion might sound, we should consider what we don't know about them. Every species has a predator, even us. His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Could it be possible that these humans were exactly what Kreven described? A predator so calm, so confident, that it unnerved even the most fearsome hunters? Xyler dismissed the meeting shortly after, but Kreven's theory lingered in everyone's minds. The idea that the humans might represent a greater threat than anyone had anticipated was both terrifying and fascinating. For centuries, the Vorthakians had prided themselves on being the ultimate predators of the galaxy. Now they faced the possibility that they had met their match, not in brute strength, but in intelligence and composure. While the Vorthakians grappled with their fears, Marcus continued observing from afar. He had anticipated this reaction. Most species viewed violence as the ultimate show of power, but Marcus saw it differently. True dominance wasn't about destruction, it was about control. By withholding aggression, he forced the Vorthakians to question their own superiority. Slowly but surely, cracks began forming in their unity. Advisors argued among themselves. Soldiers muttered complaints under their breath. Even Xylar, the once unshakable commander, started doubting his ability to lead. Marcus knew that patience was key. He couldn't afford to make a mistake, not when the fate of Earth rested in his hands. So he bided his time, allowing the Vorthakians to stew in their uncertainty. He studied their behavior, noting how fear eroded their discipline and cohesion. He watched as their formations became less precise, their communications more frantic. It was working. His strategy of nonviolence was proving more effective than any battle plan. But Marcus also knew that this standoff couldn't last forever. Eventually, the Vorthakians would grow desperate enough to take drastic action. And when that moment came, he needed to be ready. So he activated a series of contingency plans, preparing for every possible scenario. Hidden weapon systems came online. Drones positioned themselves strategically around the fleet. Backup power reserves were charged to full capacity. Marcus left nothing to chance. Despite the mounting tension, Marcus allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He thought about the years he had spent alone in the Australian outback, building his fleet piece by piece. He remembered the sleepless nights, the endless calculations, the countless failures that had nearly broken him. But he also remembered why he had started this journey in the first place, to protect Earth. Not for glory, not for revenge, but because it was the right thing to do. As he gazed at the stars through a small viewport in his command center, Marcus felt a strange sense of pride. Humanity might not have been ready to face the cosmos yet, but he was determined to buy them time. Time to learn, to grow, to become stronger. Until then, he would stand guard, a lone sentinel protecting his home from threats beyond imagination. Unbeknownst to Marcus, however, the Vorthakians were planning their boldest move yet. Frustrated by their inability to penetrate the human fleets, Defense's Commander Xylar decided to take matters into his own hands. Under cover of darkness, he dispatched a stealth squadron, a group of elite pilots trained for covert operations. Their mission was simple: infiltrate one of the human ships and extract its secrets. If they could understand the technology behind these vessels, they might finally gain the upper hand. But Marcus had anticipated this too. Hidden within his fleet was a feature he had been saving for just such an occasion. As the stealth squadron approached, unaware of the trap awaiting them, Marcus activated a low-frequency pulse emitter. The device emitted a harmless but highly effective signal that disrupted the Vorthakian ship's systems without causing physical damage. Within seconds, the squadron's engines sputtered and died, leaving them stranded in space. From his command center, Marcus watched the operation unfold with grim satisfaction. He recorded the entire exchange, capturing every panicked transmission from the stranded pilots. Then he broadcast the footage directly to the Vorthakian fleet. The message was clear: "We are watching. We are prepared. Leave now, or face the consequences." The impact of this revelation sent shockwaves through the Vorthakian ranks. Never before had they encountered an adversary who wielded power so effortlessly. It wasn't the ships or the technology that terrified them. It was the man behind it all. A single human operating alone had outsmarted their entire armada. And as the reality of their situation sank in, the Vorthakians realized one undeniable truth: sometimes the deadliest predators are the ones who remain calm. The Vorthakians were not used to feeling powerless. For centuries, they had roamed the galaxy like kings, their dominance unchallenged. They prided themselves on their ability to crush resistance before it even began. Fear was their weapon, and submission was the currency they demanded from every species they encountered. But now, for the first time in their history, they faced an enemy who refused to play by their rules. This human fleet, led by a single man, was unlike anything they had ever seen. It wasn't just the advanced technology or the flawless strategy that unnerved them. It was the calmness, the absolute stillness with which these ships operated. There was no anger, no desperation, no sign of weakness, just quiet confidence. Commander Xylar couldn't shake off the feeling that he was dealing with something far greater than himself. His instincts screamed at him to retreat, but pride held him back. The Vorthakians were warriors, conquerors. To flee would be an admission of defeat, a stain on their legacy that could never be erased. Yet, as he sat alone in his quarters, staring at the holographic display of the human fleet, doubt gnawed at him. What if Kreven was right? What if humanity truly represented the predator they had always feared existed somewhere in the universe? Meanwhile, aboard one of Marcus Kane's ships, preparations continued silently. Marcus had anticipated that the Vorthakians would attempt some kind of covert operation. Their stealth squadron's failure only confirmed what he already knew. They were growing desperate. Desperation bred recklessness, and recklessness led to mistakes. Marcus intended to exploit every misstep they made. He didn't need flashy displays of power or dramatic declarations. All he needed was patience, and the knowledge that he was several steps ahead of them. As word of the failed infiltration spread through the Vorthakian ranks, panic began to take root. Soldiers whispered among themselves, questioning whether their leaders had underestimated the humans. Advisors argued over whether to escalate the conflict or cut their losses and leave. Some believed the humans were bluffing, while others insisted they posed a grave threat. Tensions ran high, and cracks started forming in the Vorthakians' once unified front. Kreven, the junior officer who had dared to suggest that humans might represent a predator species, found himself thrust into the spotlight. Though his theory had initially been dismissed, it gained traction as evidence mounted. "Think about it," he said during a heated council meeting. "Every species has a predator, even us. We've spent centuries hunting weaker civilizations, but what happens when we meet someone stronger? Someone smarter?" His words resonated with many, especially those who had witnessed firsthand the eerie efficiency of the human fleet. But not everyone agreed. A senior officer named Thalric slammed his fist on the table, his voice booming across the chamber. "Enough of this nonsense," he barked. "Humans are nothing but primitives. Look at their ships. They're patched together from scraps. How can you call such creatures predators?" Thalric's outburst drew murmurs of agreement from some, but others remained unconvinced. The longer the standoff dragged on, the more apparent it became that the humans weren't acting like victims. They were behaving like hunters, calm, calculated, and utterly in control. Back on Earth, life carried on as usual. Humanity remained, blissfully unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding light years away. No governments issued statements. No news outlets reported strange sightings in the sky. To most people, the stars were still distant pinpricks of light, beautiful but untouchable. Even Marcus's neighbors, if he could be said to have any, had no idea what he was doing. To them, he was just a reclusive scientist living in the middle of nowhere, tinkering with old machinery and avoiding human contact. Few suspected that this quiet man was single-handedly protecting the planet from an alien invasion. Marcus, however, wasn't concerned with recognition. Fame meant nothing to him. His only goal was to ensure Earth's safety. As he monitored the situation from his command center, he reflected on the nature of power. Most species equated strength with aggression, believing that the loudest roar or the biggest claw guaranteed dominance. But Marcus understood that true power lay in restraint, in knowing when to act and when to hold back. By refusing to engage directly, he forced the Vorthakians to confront their own fears and insecurities. And slowly but surely, those fears were eating away at their resolve. Days turned into weeks, and the psychological toll on the Vorthakians became impossible to ignore. Crew members grew irritable, snapping at each other over minor disagreements. Pilots made reckless decisions, straying too close to the human ships only to retreat in confusion when nothing happened. Even Commander Xylar, once a paragon of discipline, began showing signs of strain. Dark circles formed under his eyes, and his usually sharp claws clicked nervously against the floor as he paced the bridge. One evening, Xylar summoned Kreven to his private chambers. The young officer entered hesitantly, unsure of what to expect. "You believe these humans are our predator," Xylar said without preamble, his voice low and gravelly. "Tell me why." Kreven swallowed hard, choosing his words carefully. "Sir, consider their behavior. They haven't attacked us, yet they've blocked every attempt we've made to approach Earth. They communicate in short, neutral messages, giving nothing away. And their ships, they're not designed for show. They're functional, efficient. Everything about them suggests purpose. These aren't the actions of a frightened species begging for mercy. This is how a predator behaves: calm, deliberate, and in complete control." Xylar listened intently, his expression unreadable. When Kreven finished speaking, the commander remained silent for a long moment. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Perhaps you're right," he admitted, his voice tinged with resignation. "But if they are our predator, then what does that make us?" Kreven didn't answer. He didn't need to. The implication hung heavy in the air. The Vorthakians, who had always seen themselves as apex predators, might actually be prey. While the Vorthakians wrestled with this unsettling realization, Marcus prepared for the next phase of his plan. He knew that the psychological warfare was working, but he also understood that it wouldn't last forever. Eventually, the Vorthakians would either attack or retreat. Either way, Marcus wanted to ensure that Earth remained safe. So he activated additional defenses, deploying hidden drones equipped with non-lethal weapons designed to disable rather than destroy. He also programmed his ships to automatically adjust their positions based on real-time data, ensuring that they always maintained a protective barrier between the aliens and Earth. Despite the mounting tension, Marcus allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. He thought about the years he had spent building his fleet, the sacrifices he had made, and the countless sleepless nights spent perfecting every detail. It had all been worth it. Humanity might not have been ready to face the cosmos yet, but Marcus was determined to buy them time. Time to learn, to grow, to become stronger. Until then, he would stand guard, a lone sentinel protecting his home from threats beyond imagination. Unbeknownst to both sides, the climax of this standoff was fast approaching. The Vorthakians, driven to the brink of desperation, were preparing for their boldest move yet. Commander Xyler had decided to launch a full-scale assault, believing that sheer numbers and firepower would overwhelm the human fleet. But Marcus was ready. Hidden within his ships were features he had been saving for just such an occasion. Features that would prove once and for all that humanity wasn't as weak or divided as the Vorthakians believed. As the countdown to battle began, Marcus felt a strange sense of calm. He had done everything he could to prepare. Now it was up to fate, or perhaps something greater, to decide the outcome. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. The Vorthakians would never forget the name of the man who had turned their world upside down. The tension between the Vorthakians and Marcus Kane's fleet had reached a boiling point. For weeks, the standoff had simmered in the cold void of space, with neither side making a decisive move. But now, Commander Xylar had made up his mind. Frustrated by their inability to break through the human defenses, he ordered a full-scale assault, a last-ditch effort to assert dominance and reclaim their pride. The Vorthakian flagship bristled with activity as hundreds of ships prepared for battle. Weapon systems powered up, engines roared to life, and soldiers strapped into their stations. This was it, the moment they would either crush the humans or face humiliation. But Marcus Kane wasn't worried. In fact, he had been expecting this. From the moment the Vorthakians arrived, he had anticipated that they would eventually resort to brute force. It was in their nature. They were predators, after all, creatures who thrived on aggression and destruction. What they didn't realize was that Marcus had spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. Every ship in his fleet, every piece of technology, every contingency plan, it was all designed with one purpose in mind: survival. And if survival meant teaching the Vorthakians a lesson they would never forget, so be it. As the Vorthakian armada advanced, Marcus remained calm. He sat alone in his command center, surrounded by screens displaying real-time data from his drones and sensors. His hands moved steadily over the controls, inputting commands and adjusting trajectories. There was no panic, no hesitation. To him, this was just another calculation, another problem to solve. He had faced far greater challenges. In his life, the loss of his family, years of isolation, the endless struggle to build his fleet. Compared to those trials, this was almost routine. The Vorthakians launched their attack with overwhelming force. Plasma cannons fired bright streaks of energy, lighting up the darkness like fireworks. Missiles streaked across the void, targeting Marcus's ships with deadly precision. Explosions erupted in space, sending shockwaves rippling through the debris field. From the outside, it looked like chaos, a brutal, one-sided battle where the humans stood no chance. But appearances could be deceiving. Marcus's fleet absorbed the initial barrage without flinching. Each ship was equipped with advanced shielding, technology scavenged from old satellites and repurposed military hardware. The shields shimmered under the onslaught, deflecting most of the incoming fire. When a few projectiles managed to penetrate the defenses, automated repair systems kicked in, sealing breaches and restoring functionality within seconds. The Vorthakians watched in disbelief as their attacks seemed to have little effect. Their weapons, which had reduced entire planets to rubble, appeared useless against these patchwork vessels. Commander Xylar clenched his claws in frustration. Increase firepower, he barked, his voice echoing across the bridge. Focus on their lead ship. If we can take out their flagship, the rest will fall. But Marcus had anticipated this too. He knew the Vorthakians would target what they perceived as the command center. So he had built decoy systems into several of his ships, creating the illusion of multiple flagships. As the Vorthakians concentrated their fire on one vessel, another would subtly shift position, drawing their attention away. It was a game of misdirection, and Marcus played it perfectly. Meanwhile, hidden features within Marcus's fleet began to activate. One by one, his ships deployed non-lethal countermeasures designed to disable rather than destroy. Electromagnetic pulses disrupted the Vorthakians' communication networks, leaving them unable to coordinate their attacks. Gravitational traps pulled enemy ships off course, forcing them to waste precious fuel trying to escape. And when a particularly aggressive squadron attempted to breach the defensive line, Marcus unleashed his secret weapon, a swarm of micro-drones equipped with EMP charges. The drones descended upon the Vorthakian fleet like a cloud of locusts, targeting key systems and rendering entire ships immobile. Pilots screamed in confusion as their controls went dead. Their engines sputtered and their weapons failed. Within minutes, dozens of Vorthakian vessels were stranded in space, helpless and vulnerable. The once mighty armada was falling apart, its unity shattered by fear and chaos. Back aboard the Vorthakian flagship, Xylar struggled to maintain order. Reports poured in from every direction, each more dire than the last. Ships were disabled, crews were panicking, and morale was collapsing. Even Thalric, the senior officer who had mocked Krevin's theory about humans being predators, was visibly shaken. "What are these creatures?" he muttered, staring at the holographic display of the battlefield. "How can they fight like this?" Krevin, standing quietly in the corner, finally spoke up. "This is what I warned you about," he said softly. "They're not fighting. They're controlling us. Every move we make, they've already countered. Every strategy we try, they've already anticipated. We're not dealing with primitives here. We're dealing with something far more dangerous." Xylar didn't respond. He couldn't. Deep down, he knew Krevin was right. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were dismantling the Vorthakian fleet piece by piece, using tactics that were both brilliant and merciless. And worst of all, they hadn't even fired a single shot. On Earth, humanity remained oblivious to the cosmic drama unfolding light years away. Life carried on as usual, with people going about their daily routines unaware that a lone man in the Australian outback was single-handedly protecting them from annihilation. Marcus Kane didn't care about recognition. To him, fame was irrelevant. All that mattered was ensuring Earth's safety, and proving that humanity wasn't as weak or divided as others believed. As the battle raged on, Marcus decided it was time to deliver the final blow. He activated a feature he had been saving, for just such an occasion, a high-frequency signal transmitted directly to the Vorthakian fleet. The message was short and simple, yet it carried an undeniable weight. "Leave this system and do not return. You are outmatched." The transmission reverberated through the void, reaching every Vorthakian ship. Crew members froze in place, their hearts pounding as they processed the words. Never before had they been spoken to like this, calmly, confidently, without a trace of anger or malice. It wasn't a threat, it was a statement of fact. And the worst part? They knew it was true. Commander Xylar called an emergency council meeting aboard his flagship. Advisors argued over whether to continue fighting or retreat, but the decision was clear. The Vorthakians had lost. Their ships were disabled, their morale was shattered, and their pride lay in tatters. With heavy hearts, Xylar gave the order to withdraw. One by one, the remaining vessels turned away from Earth, limping, back toward their home territory. They vowed never to underestimate humanity again. As the Vorthakian fleet disappeared into the distance, Marcus allowed himself a rare smile. He had done it. Against all odds, he had protected Earth from an alien invasion, not through violence or destruction, but through intelligence, patience, and sheer determination. It was a victory unlike any other, one that proved that true strength came not from power, but from control. But Marcus knew this wasn't the end. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, other species might still pose a threat to humanity. Until Earth was ready to face the cosmos, he would remain vigilant, guarding his home from whatever dangers lurked in the darkness. For now, though, he could rest easy, knowing that he had bought humanity time to learn, to grow, and to become stronger. And as he gazed at the stars through the small viewport in his command center, Marcus felt a strange sense of peace. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, filled with wonders and terrors alike. But for the first time in years, he felt hopeful. Humanity had proven it could stand its ground, even against the fiercest predators. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The Vorthakians' retreat marked the end of a chapter in humanity's hidden history, a chapter written not by governments or armies, but by a single man. Marcus Kane watched silently as the alien fleet disappeared into the void, their engines sputtering and their pride shattered. He didn't celebrate. There was no sense of triumph, no rush of adrenaline that often accompanies victory. Instead, Marcus felt only relief, a quiet satisfaction that Earth had been spared from destruction. For him, this wasn't about glory, it was about survival. And for now, humanity had survived. Back on Earth, life continued as usual. No one noticed the cosmic drama that had unfolded light years away. People went to work, children played in parks, and scientists studied the stars without realizing how close they had come to catastrophe. Even amateur astronomers who tracked strange signals in space couldn't piece together the full story. The Vorthakian invasion, and Marcus's role in stopping it, remained a secret known only to the aliens who fled and the solitary man who stood between them and Earth. For weeks, after the battle, Marcus dismantled much of his fleet. He kept only a handful of ships hidden in remote locations across the globe, ready to deploy if another threat emerged. But most of the vessels were broken down, their parts carefully stored away for future use. To anyone watching, it might have seemed like Marcus was giving up, retreating back into his solitary existence. But he knew better. His fight wasn't over. It would never truly be over. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless species, some peaceful and others predatory. Humanity's safety was fragile, and Marcus intended to remain its silent guardian for as long as he could. Despite his reclusive nature, Marcus occasionally allowed himself moments of reflection. Sitting alone in his command center buried deep within the Australian outback, he thought about what he had accomplished. Decades of isolation, sacrifice, and relentless effort had culminated in this moment, saving Earth from an alien invasion. Yet there was no fanfare, no recognition. Not that he expected any. Fame held no appeal for him. What mattered was the result, the knowledge that he had given humanity more time to prepare for the challenges ahead. As months passed, rumors of the calm human began to circulate among certain circles of the galaxy. The Vorthakians, humiliated by their defeat, whispered tales of a lone human who had outsmarted their entire armada. These stories spread slowly at first, carried by traders and travelers who ventured into distant star systems. Some dismissed them as exaggerations or myths, while others believed they contained a kernel of truth. Regardless of whether the accounts were accurate, one thing was clear. The legend of the calm human served as both a warning and a reminder. Never underestimate the quiet ones, for in their stillness lies a power greater than any weapon. Commander. Xyler, once proud and unyielding, became a shadow of his former self. The failure haunted him, gnawing at his confidence and tarnishing his reputation. His advisors questioned his leadership, and his soldiers muttered complaints under their breath. The Vorthakians, who had always seen themselves as apex predators, now grappled with the unsettling realization that they were not invincible. Krevin, the junior officer whose theory about humans being predators had proven correct, rose through the ranks, earning respect from those who had initially mocked him. He often reminded his comrades of the lesson they had learned. Every species has a predator, even them. But while the Vorthakians licked their wounds and rebuilt their fleet, Marcus remained vigilant. He monitored transmissions from across the galaxy, analyzing patterns and searching for signs of new threats. He upgraded his remaining ships, incorporating lessons learned from the battle with the Vorthakians. Each improvement made his fleet stronger, more efficient, and better prepared for whatever might come next. Though he hoped for peace, Marcus understood that hope alone wouldn't protect Earth. Preparation was key. Years passed, and the memory of the Vorthakian encounter faded into legend. On Earth, governments scrambled to make sense of intercepted alien communications decoded by amateur astronomers. Speculation ran rampant, ranging from divine intervention to secret military projects. Few suspected the truth, that a lone man living in solitude had single-handedly protected the planet. Marcus, meanwhile, continued his work in obscurity, content to let the world believe whatever it wanted. Fame meant nothing to him. His only motivation had been ensuring Earth's safety. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Marcus stepped outside his cabin. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of eucalyptus, trees native to the region. He looked up at the stars, their light twinkling against the dark canvas of the night. They were beautiful, mysterious, and infinite, a reminder of how small humanity was in the grand scheme of things. Yet despite their vastness, Marcus felt no fear. He had faced the unknown and emerged victorious. Whatever lay beyond those stars, he was ready. In his mind, he replayed the events of the past year, the construction of his fleet, the standoff with the Vorthakians, the final message that sent them fleeing. It had been a test, a trial by fire, and humanity had passed. Not because of its governments or armies, but because of individuals like him, people who refused to give up, who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure the survival of their species. Marcus realized that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or resources, it was its resilience, its ability to adapt, innovate, and persevere even in the face of overwhelming odds. As he gazed at the stars, Marcus allowed himself a rare moment of optimism. Humanity wasn't perfect, it was flawed, divided, and often reckless, but it was also capable of greatness, of compassion, creativity, and courage. Someday, perhaps humanity would be ready to step onto the galactic stage to join the countless other species exploring the cosmos. Until then, Marcus would stand guard, a silent sentinel protecting his home from threats beyond imagination. And so, the legend of the calm human endured, not in headlines or history books, but in the whispers of those who dared to venture into the unknown. To some, he was a myth, a cautionary tale told around campfires on distant planets. To others, he was proof that even the smallest spark could ignite change. But to Marcus Kane, none of that mattered. He had done what he set out to do. Buy humanity. Time. Time to learn, to grow, to become stronger. Until then, he would remain the quiet predator, watching, waiting, and protecting. For in the vastness of space, where every species has a predator, the deadliest ones often wore the calmest faces.